Hey guys, it's Kemi, my review for this week of Big Brother 21, episodes 21 through 23, and I was looking forward to this week, mainly because of how last week ended up playing out, with Jack leaving and things like that, but at the same time, I expected for this week to basically be not as, let's just say dynamic as last week was. I kind of felt like last week was a fluke, and this week wasn't going to be as good, and yeah, that was the case. This wasn't at all a bad week. It was just kind of fine. There were definitely things I was annoyed by for sure, but compared to especially the first half of this game, this is not as unwatchable as it's been. Definitely. It's getting a little bit better in that sense, and we're just getting into right now. And of course, we're going to start with Sunday's episode. And Sunday's episode, honestly, I didn't think was all that bad. I actually did think it was a kind of a good episode, honestly. There were things here that I did like. Starting out with Tommy's HOH, which I actually did think, for the most part, he was a pretty good HOH. That being said, I don't really understand why he has this desire to keep the remnants of the six together. I don't really get it, honestly. I understand that he's been working with them up to this point, but I feel like because of the fact that they're now, split apart, this should make Tommy, this should incentivize Tommy to branch out more, make some more alliances, start trying to work with other people. You can keep Christie and you keep Sis in your back pocket because you have been working with those two and they're on your side, but Jackson and Holly, they're kind of free agents at this moment. I know obviously they're free agents. They can kind of do what they want, and I don't understand why he feels he needs to bring the six back together. It's also just not going to work. Jackson and Christie do not like each other. No matter what he does, he's not going to be able to get those two on the same page. So that keeps it from happening. Obviously, Holly and Christie, they don't have that same animosity, but because of the fact that Holly is so involved with Jackson right now, and those two are looked at as a power couple in that way, obviously it's not going to work out, and I don't understand why Tommy feels that they need to come back together. But other than that, I thought he did do a good job. He does make his target very clear in Kat, which I actually did think made a lot of sense. Kat is someone who is kind of standing in his way right now because of the fact that her and Holly, he thinks know each other, which we know that they do know each other. But he's also kind of conflicted because while he wants to go after someone like Kat, he's kind of wondering, maybe I should just take a shot at Jackson. He's kind of wondering what he should really do here. But he feels that Kat is probably the best target for sure. And I honestly would agree with that. I think Kat is a very good target in that way because Kat is working very closely with Holly. Kat has a lot of bonds with pretty much everyone, and by getting Kat out of the house, that leaves Tommy open to work with more people. So while it is kind of a boring week because we're getting someone like Kat out, I actually do think he made the right choice here. I do actually think Kat is a suitable target, and I thought that that was a good idea overall for what he was trying to do. I did not like the fact, though, that Cliff, he goes to Cliff, and Cliff is totally okay with just being a pawn and things like that. I understand, why he wants to put Cliff up, but I wasn't really a huge fan of the way things played out there. We also do get confirmation in this episode about Nick, after Bella left and things like that, we were kind of conflicted with where Nick stands, and sadly, he's on the Tommy, Christie, and Sis side. He makes it very clear that if he wins POV, he will take Christie off the block, which, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be this could just be me being extremely, extremely incorrect because that has happened before, and maybe I'm just not factually correct here. But hasn't it been the case that if someone is a third nominee, they are on the block for the entire week unless they win the veto? I mean, again, this could be wrong, but most of the time, unless you win the veto, you're still on the block. I didn't think that third nominees could be saved by, the person that's not on the block. They could obviously save the two nominees, but I didn't think the third one could be changed, because, I mean, Big Brother 15, that the only time they got taken off the block is if, you know, they themselves won the veto, and the same with Big Brother 18s. This is why you don't do third nominees. It's very confusing. It never works out the way they want it to. And again, Big Brother just never learns when it comes to this stuff, but whatever, he's working with them. Completely the wrong side, let me just say. I think Nick needs to be on the side with the outsiders. That's where he should be right now. But no, he chooses them because, oh, sis is hot, I guess, and he wants to sleep with her so he can, and just forget about Bella entirely, who he rarely ever brings up these days, but whatever. You know, that's what he's doing. That's his prerogative, but it's dumb. It's stupid, but whatever. Who cares? But I do have to say, the way the field trip stuff played out, I thought was great, because Jackson and Christie pretty much get a rude awakening from the beginning. They are very much onto the fact that we do not like them, and that they were picked because of the fact that one of them could be a third nominee. Basically, the way this works out is one of them gets safety, one of them gets some kind of punishment, and then one of them ends up on the block. Christie just completely just fails in this comp, and it's not just like a small fail. No, she crashes hard here. Admittedly, it was kind of hard. It was that one where they had to put the egg through the wires and shit, and they had to try to land it in the basket, and Christie was just doing terrible here. But Jackson does end up pulling out the win, which is not surprising at all. It's Jackson, Christie, and Sis. Sis ends up having to don this chicken costume, which honestly, I thought they were kind of a little too nice to her with the way this was done. I mean, I've seen way worse punishments. I mean, going back to Big Brother 19, a really bad season, but what Alex had to deal with in that, where, you know, she had to carry all that heavy stuff and wear that, like, camping outfit, that was way harsher than what Sis got here. Literally, all Sis has to do is wear this chicken costume, which basically looks like the onesie you get when you need to get a Halloween costume and you don't know what to wear, so you just wear a chicken costume. That's exactly what this looked like to me. It really did not seem that bad. There's even points where she's not even wearing the full costume. I just thought they were way too nice to her on this, especially for someone like Sis, who has admitted multiple times that she does not want to be there, and she did not like the fact that she was wearing this costume. You'd think they'd give her something a little bit more harsh, and they didn't, and that was very surprising me. She also somehow, I don't know if Sis is just dumb, I do kind of think Sis is dumb, or if she's just kind of in her own world, but she somehow does not get, you know, she is not somehow clued into the fact that we don't like her. You know, she doesn't think that this is because America hates her. She thinks America loves her in that way, but, you know, Jackson said it best when, you know, if these were people they liked, then Cliff and Nicole would be playing, and that's exactly true. And I like the way things were done here. Jackson ends up getting immunity because of the, well, not immunity, but he cannot be nominated at all for the week, and obviously this doesn't really throw a wrench into Tommy's plans, but it shows that he was kind of on the right path with wanting to not nominate the 6 because he can't nominate the 6 now except for Christie. Christie is now on the block. He is devastated about it, and I was really pulling for a possible Christie eviction this week, and it would have been a good week to do it. Obviously not on Tommy's HOH. That would have been terrible. That would have been like Haley's HOH last year, where she ended up sending Rockstar out the door again because of a twist. But basically, the way things do play out, he nominates Kat and Cliff. That's basically all there is to talk about for Sunday's episode. So now we get to Wednesday's episode, and look, while this week didn't piss me off as much as others, this episode was kind of dumb. There was a lot of stuff going on here that I really did not like all that much, especially when it comes to Christie. Like I said, she is just completely upset about what's happened here. You have her, and you also have Kat crying a lot, but Christie especially, she just is devastated over what happened. She feels it's worst case scenario, but you have people like Tommy who's saying that, you know, he's going to do whatever he can to get her off that block and things like that, and again, it just kind of annoys me because it just makes me wonder, like, what was the purpose of having a third nominee if they can just be easily taken off in that way? But again, we'll get to that very soon. Jackson does end up talking to Sis about his desire to go after Christie, and it seems like she's not going to relay this information to anyone, which, I mean, that's surprising to me. I mean, Sis is still a terrible, terrible player, possibly one of the worst we've ever had. But she at least didn't tell Christie about this, which I was happy about for the most part. The real stuff to talk about is the veto here. It was, in fact, Otev, and a lot of stuff does go down. You have Kat, who's very upset, but you also have Cliff, who not only is doing what he can to win this veto and take himself off, but he himself is injured. He got injured a couple weeks back when that veto happened, involved all of them taking their clothes. I guess he somehow got injured there. And he's about to win the veto, and then Kat just completely takes his spot and takes him out of the comp. And look, I understand Kat wanted to do what she could to save herself here, but one, this makes her look like a hypocrite for something she says in the next episode, which we'll talk about. Two, I really don't understand why she had to take his spot. It's not like this would have knocked her out of the game. I don't really understand why she had to do this here. She doesn't end up winning the veto anyway. It just seemed a little bit too cruel, and I don't really understand why she did that. But either way, Cliff is out. Tommy does end up winning the veto here, which isn't really a surprise at all. But what he ends up doing with it, he ends up saving Christie. And this really annoyed me. Not only did this feel like a just complete non-ceremony, I mean, it was just hearing him have to say, because the third nominee was chosen by America, they can't be replaced, just annoyed me. That's not how it's been done other times. I mean, when a third nominee gets replaced, when a third nominee comes off, they usually do get replaced. Here's what should have been done. Whoever the fourth person was that was chosen for the field trip, probably Jack, but obviously not Jack. Whoever that was, they should have gone up. They should have done something like that, because this just felt like a complete waste of a twist. And again, this happened all season. There is yet to be a twist this season that actually has an impact on the game. There hasn't been one. Minus the camp director one, which was a complete clusterfuck. There is yet to be something that has an actual impact on the game, and this unfortunately wasn't one of them either. So I just wonder, what was the point of this whole thing if the third nominee could just easily be taken off? It really annoyed me in that way. So yeah, this episode wasn't really all that great. There wasn't really a lot to talk about, and yeah, it just makes this entire week kind of feel like a waste of time in that way. Now, Thursday's episode, there actually is quite a lot to talk about. A lot of new groups and new sort of things start to form here. We see a lot of machinations and things like that, and we'll just get into it. So the main thing to really talk about is Cliff, who I actually thought handled himself really well, I have to say. Because Cliff is in a position where even though he's on the block, he is doing whatever he can to save his own ass. Because he's worried that the vote is going to flip. He knows the cat has a tendency to find a way to get herself saved, and he's worried that's going to happen again. So rather than just laying down and die, he decides to branch out. He starts to strike up alliances with people, and he comes to this realization that if they get Kat out, this actually very much, if Kat gets out and things like that, then him and Nicole are actually in a very good spot. They can then ally with Christie, Tommy, Sis, and I believe Holly was included as well. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's the 6 of them. And basically that this new 6 is now going to form. Like I said, it's Christie, Tommy, Sis, Nicole, Cliff, and I believe Holly. Those 6 are going to work together, and this is something that Cliff is very much happy about. He loves the fact that this is a thing. He thinks that this could really, but actually no, it wasn't Holly, it was Nick that was included, and he thinks this could really benefit them. And Nicole being very excited, she does something that I think was really dumb. However, this all comes crashing down when Kat gets word of what's going on. And honestly, I don't understand what Kat was upset about here. I really don't get it. Because here's the thing. Yes, I understand that he was your friend and that you were in Cliff's Angels and things like that. But think about this, Kat. He is on the block next to you. It's either he lays down and dies and just decides to just, your game is over in that way. He just accepts the fact that he's leaving. or he tries to campaign. He tries to branch out. Kat, on the other hand, does not do this. And again, it contradicts what she did to Cliff, where she basically took his spot in that veto just to save herself. So the fact that she's upset at him for being selfish when she did the same exact thing just shows how hypocritical she is in that way. And it was really annoying. I like Kat quite a lot, but this week, I don't really know what she was doing. She did absolutely nothing to campaign. She spent most of the week crying her eyes out. I don't understand why she was surprised that Cliff would do this. I mean, this is exactly what you should do in Big Brother, and it annoyed me that she was mad at Cliff for this. I think Cliff did exactly the right thing. You should do what you can to try to strike out and try to make some new alliances to ensure your safety. But Kat decided not to do that, and that's ultimately why she does end up where she does here. So, again, I like Kat, but this week I did not like her at all. I thought she was honestly kind of annoying. Unfortunately, though, the other part of this that really did bother me was Nicole, sadly. Look, I do really like Nicole personality-wise. I think they had some really great stuff there, especially with her being afraid of birds. That still being a recurring joke is still a lot of fun. But I have to say, I really don't think she's that great of a player. And look, that's not saying much because there's not many good players at all this season, but her deciding to tell Jess about this alliance, I don't understand why she decided to do this. I get it, she was happy about it, but why tell Jess, someone who's not in your alliance, essentially just blowing up the whole thing? Because that's what got Kat to know about it. And if she had never told Jess, then none of this would have happened in the first place. And again, she should also know that Jess is not someone that is really on Nicole's side. There is no Jessica and Nicole. Jess is only with Nicole right now because of the fact that basically Nicole is someone that trusts her. She does not actually trust Nicole. The person that does trust Nicole is Cliff. The person that does trust Nicole is someone like the people that reached out to her. But Kat, I think, does trust Nicole for sure, but Jess absolutely is not on Nicole's side. It's always been Kat and Jess, and I don't understand why Nicole went to her about this. It really makes no sense to me, and it really makes me think less of Nicole as a player. And it could just be because she hasn't really done much game-wise that I'm just now realizing it, but this was a really dumb move. I don't really know why she had to do this. I do hope this 6 does move forward, because I think this is a really good spot for Nicole and Cliff to be in. It really does show how far they could possibly go in this game. But at the same time, I don't really know the likelihood of that happening now that Jess knows about this. Is there a way they're able to go about this, but still hide it from the other house guests? I'm not so sure now, and that's a little bit disappointing for sure. So, ultimately, though, this does lead to Kat's eviction, which I was not very surprised about. I did like, before she left, we had that whole thing with Kat and Cliff, where she talked about how Cliff was like a father to her, and then he said he wasn't her father. That was a nice little fun bit right there, but her interview with Julie was terrible. It was so awkward, and look, I don't know if this is just going to be the norm for the rest of the season, where we have an almost completely silent audience for the post show because of the fact that they're in the jury, but if this is what we're doing moving forward, I am not there for it. It makes things extremely uncomfortable to watch. Kat seemed like she was not prepared for this at all. She was dodging so many questions. She kept talking over Julie. It was honestly kind of miserable to watch, and I do like Kat, but her answers I thought were terrible. There were so many things she was saying that she just sounded like she didn't know the game at all. She didn't seem to have a very good read on the game, and that's just very disappointing to see. I do actually think Kat could have been really good, but she didn't handle herself well at all this week. She did absolutely nothing, as I said, to campaign. She just kind of accepted her fate, and I don't really know why she decided to do that. There was a good chance that Kat could have saved herself. If she would have gone to Holly and, tried to get Holly to work this out and try to get them to save her, or try to think of another potential target, this could have worked out really well for her, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I mean, there could have been a scenario where she gets Tommy to take her off and then put up someone like Jess, but that's not at all what ended up happening, and because that's why Kat did ultimately end up leaving. But again, I'm not here for these interviews. I think they're just very awkward. Jax worked because, you know, he was scum and we hate him, and I love the fact that the audience wasn't feeding into his bullshit, but with Kat, it just came across as really awkward to watch, and I really did not like it that much. The goodbye messages especially, I mean, while they're fun to watch, they lose a lot of the fun because we're not hearing that audience reaction. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I do not like the idea of them just having this, like, you know, production sitting in the audience for a post-show interview. I don't know why they can't just keep the regular audience in there. I guess it's because they're in the jury, because when they did the one with Sam, it was not like this. When they did the one with Kemi, David, and Ovi, it was not like this. So it has to be because they're in the jury, but I don't really understand how the audience's reaction is really going to have an impact on that. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but whatever, not really something to beat around the bush about for too long. But either way, like I said, this week was okay for the most part. Not really a lot to talk about in terms of strategy, minus that one thing. So moving forward, it seems that we have two factions going on here. We have the side that is Holly, Jackson, and we also have, I think, Jess kind of in the mix there. It's kind of hard to tell where she lies at this point. But they're in a very vulnerable spot. And it kind of sucks that Kat did end up leaving, because then we really would have had a nice, like, you know, then we would have really had a nice imbalance of power in that way. We could have really seen these two sides going at each other. But now it's pretty much these 6 people versus everyone else, and that's just not as fun to watch, because I want to see that pendulum getting swung, you know, one week to the next, and we are still going to see that, because Jackson is gun-ho about winning this HOH and things like that. I'm not going to talk about who won HOH, obviously, that's for next week's, you know, video, but, you know, unfortunately, I just don't think it's going to be terribly interesting moving forward. It seems pretty obvious what's going to happen. Either we're going to see someone like Christie or Tommy leave, or it's just going to be them going out, you know, getting out the outsiders, minus Cliff, who I do think is going to stay for a very long time. At this point, I think Cliff has a shot of ending up in, like, the top 4, or even the top 3. I can totally see that happening, because Cliff has done a lot to secure himself. I mean, he's done a very good job of being on good terms with Tommy, really letting everyone know where his allegiance lies, really just listening to everyone, and I do think Cliff has done a good job. Again, his HOH, while was disappointing, I do actually think it kind of saved him this season. I think if Cliff had made that move, people would not be trusting him as much as they are right now. So while again, it was kind of a lame move what he did, again, it has kind of helped him. You know, people trust him now, and because that nobody's really targeting Cliff at this point. The only reason Tommy put up Cliff is because he thought that he could, you know, he would be able to be someone that could get Kat to leave in that way. So I think that Cliff is doing a really good job right now. As far as people like Jess and Nicole, they're kind of in a weird spot where I'm not really sure where they're going to go. Jessica especially, I have no idea where she stands at this point. I really don't, because now the Kat's gone. I don't really know how things are going to play out there. Nick, I think, is not really making a very good decision by allying with Christie and Tommy. Holly and Jackson need someone. They don't really have anyone at the moment, and I feel like Nick would be a good person to kind of reel in there, but whatever. I guess we'll see the way things do play out. Also, once again, I just am very disappointed with the way this twist played out. Nothing really happened to Sis at all, other than the fact that she wore this costume and she had to complain, and apparently she had to act like a chicken at one point, but we never saw that at all, so there's not much to talk about there. And then Christie being on the block as the 3rd nominee amounted to absolutely nothing. Again, Big Brother, stop implementing these twists. They don't do anything. They don't help the season at all. If anything, it just makes things a lot more disappointing in that regard, and I hate the fact they shove in these twists. Yes, this is not a great season at all, but we don't need these twists. What we need is better gameplay, which we're not getting. If anything, these twists have, you know, halted good gameplay in that way. So I don't like the fact that this twist was a thing. It did absolutely nothing except for the fact that the 6 are still sort of together, even though Jackson and Christie are gun-ho. Jackson's kind of on good terms with everyone else at this point. It's just kind of Christie he's not on good terms with. Tommy, he definitely wants to go far with. You know, Sis, he he seems to be in a good spot with. So it really is just Christie at this point that needs to leave, and then those guys are back together, and it's almost like nothing changed at that point. So again, this twist hasn't really done much of anything except to kind of unite them in that way, which is not at all what I want to see moving forward. Again, we'll just have to see what happens at this point. It could be literally anything. At this point, we're just going to have to see what happens. I mean, I really don't know what's going to happen moving forward. Anyone could win the game at this point. Anything could happen, and that is a good spot to be in, but it's not a good spot to be in when we have players that just aren't that great at the game. This is a much better spot to be in when it's like, all right, these players are really good. Unfortunately, that's not really the case. We have Cliff. Tommy is decent at best. Jackson has his moments for sure. But most of these guys just aren't that great, so it's not terribly interesting to watch in that way. I do think Holly is going to end up going far. If she loses Jackson, I do see her actually going pretty far for sure. But either way, that's really it for my review of this week of Big Brother. Let me know what you guys thought this week overall, left your thoughts in it. Not really a lot to talk about overall, but I will see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.